Hi, it's dark. Well, that is because it's night right now. And I also figured that it would be nice to film this video with a little bit of a vibe, because in this video I want to talk to you about love, about romantic novels, but that won't make you cringe. So I'm not going to call these books romance because I feel like romance is a very specific genre, that which I am not at all talking about, but I am talking about novels or books that are about romantic love. So here I didn't go into the, friendship love, or although that is of course, a very real kind of love and a specific kind of love, but then I would have to include all the other books that I have read that on the subject of love between two people, even if it's platonic. Now it's really just about these very specific kind of passionate love affairs, whether they end up in a lifelong romance or whether they end up doomed or fleeting. I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books. I didn't count them before. 8 books. And I am ill, so pardon me in advance for my nasal voice and my cough, should my cough come. I'm also filming this video after my kids are asleep in the next room. So in case there's some wailing, or in case the bell rings, for whatever reason, I don't know why it would in the middle of the night, but who knows? Who knows? The night is full of surprises. And yeah, without further ado, I want to talk to you about these books. So I actually realized that among these 8 books, there are 4 books that are specifically queer love. So let's get into them. Swimming in the Dark. I don't know how well you will see these books in this dim light. Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Żydrowski. I really don't know how to pronounce this. I should have researched it in the beginning, but whatever. So Poland, 1980s. This is a love story between 2 men, but is a very particular backdrop. Shy, anxious, Ludwig has been sent along with the rest of his university class to an agricultural camp. Here he meets Janusz. I'm again sorry for the name pronunciations, and together they spend a dreamlike summer falling in love. But with summer over, the two are sent back to Warsaw, confronted by the scrutiny, intolerance, and corruption of life under the party, with a big P. We all know what the party means. So Ludwig and Janusz must decide how they will survive, and their different choices find themselves torn apart. So of course, that means that they have different ideologies, but at the same time, being gay and finding love at that time in 1980s Poland is so special, I presume. At its core, you have a very big dilemma. For the book, I enjoyed the story, but I thought there were some passages that were a bit overwritten, but that's just my personal opinion. This book is widely well rated on Goodreads, so I would give it a try if you're into queer books, queer romance books. Lie With Me by Philippe Besson, which I should have read in French. I know, shame on me, but yeah, it's still good. I read this in English because I just saw it in a bookstore one day in the Waterstones in Brussels, and I thought, I want to read that. And it's very small. I think I read it in a couple of days or something, and I cried in the end. So I really like these small books that, they don't floss over the details. It's not like each scene is so meticulously crafted and long and movie-like, and it's I don't know, it's still emotional and it's still heartfelt, and this I liked better than the first one I introduced to you. It's about a man who writes about his first love when he was a young teenage boy. The ending is just heartbreaking, and I think it's one of these stories where he was able to live truthfully his sexuality. At some point he finds out that this first love of his, the one that he was never able to forget, wasn't able to live as truthfully as he. So that's kind of also, it's kind of emotional. Another queer love book, Jeanette Winterson, Written on the Body, is about 2 women who have an affair. One is married, Louise, and the narrator, who is nameless, is completely smitten in love with her. We all know that Jeanette Winterson is lesbian, so even if it's not explicitly between two women, you can kind of feel the femininity between their interactions, and also the kind of emotional depth. I love these books because like you can really feel like there's a sort of extra level in the love because of the transgression in some way. So here you have the transgression also because Louise is actually married to a man. It's really good. It's a very poetic book. I really liked it. I talked about it in my favorite 2023 fiction reads, Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. I love Andre Aciman. This is one of his most popular books. I don't know why though, because all of his other books are great. I love his prose. He has such a beautiful writing style. Some of you might already know this by the movie that's been made, which I think is, the cover is taken from the movie, and it's just great. It's again two males. They meet in Italy in a sort of holiday backdrop in a little village by the sea, where the protagonist, the first person narrator, is basically I think 16 or something, and he's a bit older. He's I think 24, something like that. And again, you have this idea of transgression because you have two males, and so you feel that it's still at a time where it's not necessarily the most open. It's also quite transgressive because the man is much older, even though they're still kind of young. But it was really beautiful. It reminds me that I have to watch the movie as well, and the writing is fabulous. Andre Aciman, I'm your biggest fan. The next I actually read in French. Two French books here. It's called L'Amant by Marguerite Duras, or The Lover. It's the affair between a girl who is again much younger than the man she's having an affair with. So she has this sort of intense, passionate love affair with an older man, a Chinese man. It's very lyrical, very lush prose, very sensual. It's not linear. It's the girl, when she's older, talking about this love affair as in relating a memory. So it's very fragmentary, and it goes, it kind of like, the story kind of swirls around the present and the past and the emotional depth of the affair. So Call Me By Your Name has a very clear plot, written on the body. These two books, coincidentally two books written by women, these two books are much more like they treat desire and love in a much less linear fashion, in a much more kind of the exploration of the memory of it, which I find very interesting. One of my favorite love books ever. It was so good. I would read this again. I have read many passages again. Open Water is amazing. It's by Caleb Azuma Nelson. I also talked about it in one of these videos. Two young people meet in a pub in southeast London. Both are Black British. Both won scholarships to private schools where they struggled to belong, and both are now artists. He a photographer, she a dancer, trying to make their mark in a city that by turn celebrates and rejects them. Tentatively, tenderly, they fall in love, but two people who seem destined to be together can still be torn apart by fear and violence. So it does treat also the subject of black masculinity, where in the protagonist, who is the black man, is kind of dealing as well with issues of identity and of he's kind of reckoning with the fact that he's realizing that there is a certain perception that others have of him, and I can imagine how that must be like in a city like London, although of course I don't know at all, so it was nice to read about. And she's black, so they both understand each other in that way. They don't even have to say it, and that's what I loved about this book, is that, you know, there was so many things that were not necessarily explicit, but you kind of understand. I really love the fact that their friendship was, to me, felt very genuine and was the starting point of love. Often in these books, at least in the books that I've mentioned before, you really have this sort of like passion, love at first sight kind of thing, where it's not necessarily, there's not necessarily a sort of bond beyond the savage, animalistic desire that the people have, for each other. And in this one, you really you have that as well, but you really have this this stage where they get to know each other, and where they obviously have such intense chemistry that it doesn't really matter whether they end up together, because the chemistry is there, the love is there, everything is unsaid, and even when it's unsaid, they know it and they can feel it, and that's why I found this book magical. It managed to talk about a certain love that I myself would struggle so much to put into words, yet have experienced and I'm haunted by. Not just the experience, but as a writer, haunted by the seemingly difficult and arduous task it would be to write about it in a beautiful way. Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I loved this book. I found that it was one of the most intelligent love stories. I don't know how to describe it, but basically you have two people who meet in an art gallery and they decide to have 6 conversations together, and you have this sort of chemistry from the start, and she is kind of like this rebellious spirit. You can see that she's dealing with certain issues that they actually are both dealing with certain mental health issues, but because they're highly creative and intelligent, it kind of creates these very interesting conversations between them. Contemporary love in the best way. And the prose was sublime. She has a very unique way of telling a story, and she has a very specific command on the language and the plot. And yeah, I was actually pretty hesitant at first when I started to read it, but it was so unique. It's really like, often you say that there's these writers that you discover and that you've never read anything like that, but with her, yeah, I've never read anything like it. I think it's her only non-fantasy book. So I've tried her other books, but it wasn't really for me. I think it's just because I'm not a huge fantasy reader. At least, I mean, I have phases, but I'm not a huge fantasy reader. But yeah, this one, Alone with You in the Ether, really good. And the title is just amazing. The Time Traveler's Wife. I love this book. It's so good. It's big, but it made me cry so much, like the last pages. Here again, you have this relationship that you follow throughout the years, so it's like a lifelong love story. They end up having a child, so it's basically the story of a couple, and one of them is a time traveler. So it's very far-fetched, but it was really well rendered. It's not at all corny or cringy. Surprisingly, you would think so, but it wasn't. It was very well thought out. The characters were extremely well thought out. The plot was quite immaculate, and you would wonder, because it jumps around in time a lot, because obviously it's a time traveler. It deserves the popularity because it was multi, I don't know how many multi-million bestseller. This is your cue to read it if you haven't yet. Pardon my voice, my very sick, cold voice and nasal voice. Very fitting to talk about love. But yeah, here are my 8 suggestions, my 8 book recommendations for you. Books on love that won't make you cringe. Enjoy.